am so thrilled to be here with my new friend, Dr. Lisa Koche. Dr. Lisa, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to see everything you're doing.
We have a few mutual friends, one of whom is JJ Virgin, who is a neighbor and a good friend of mine. And she's been here at the Faster Way HQ before for trainings. Our audience loves her. And
Amazing.
You also are friends with and colleagues with Dr. George Springer, who we very recently had here to speak about sugar as we did our sugar detox. So I'm just so glad that we're now getting to know each other and friends, and we're neighbors too, which is great.
It's beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Yes, Dr. Springer and I have enjoyed a 14, 15-year side-by-side healing the world journey together.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. I love to hear when and why you entered the wellness industry. When and why did you become a doctor?
So I was gifted, I say, by being a patient before I became a doctor. So that's pretty rare. Most of the time people are out in their world practicing and something happens. For me, I got diagnosed at 15 with childhood leukemia.
Ugh.
And so I went for a camp physical, felt totally fine, and started a journey. So I went through high school with a fat steroid face and a wig. And then right when all my hair had grown back, thought I was okay, went to my first ever PAP. They found a mass on my ovary and realized that the cancer was back. And I had to, instead of my junior year in college, go back into chemo, went into chemo-induced heart failure. And all of that crazy journey was prior to medical school. So it kind of helped me. I really went to med school for the sole reason of figuring out why I got sick. And when I was there, I just kept asking questions because I'd watch patients come in with various complaints and problems, and they would get put on certain protocols. And I would just sit there asking all the professors and teachers, okay, but why? Like, why is that person sick and this one's not? And why did this happen? And the answer was, this is just how we do it. And that's what I got every time, is this is just how we do it. And so for me, that wasn't enough. And I was out of the box from day one. So just really a curiosity. I went into prevention of disease. My first med school interview, the doctor said, what do you want to do, when you get out? And I said, well, I want to be a pediatric oncologist, because that's all I knew right at the time. And he's the one, he looked at me and said, no, you don't. And I was like, well, what do you mean? No, I don't. And he said, you want to take care of sick kids all day? And then I said, no, I want them never to have to do, I don't want anyone to ever have to do what I just went through. And so that was a pivoting point where I went into prevention. So I just went the complete opposite way, joined a group of cardiologists kind of focusing at that point on prevention of cardiovascular disease, combining kind of my approach towards prevention and my experience with my heart. And I got into obesity management back then. So I was actually helping with gastric bypass program at the hospital. So I had to teach myself nutrition, teach myself about the psychology of weight, because I was seeing all the patients pre and post-op. And that really kind of started my more full spectrum approach to healing. And then we went on from there, and it's just kind of evolved as I've had my own medical issues pop up throughout. They've come back in different ways, mostly cardiac related, which has led me into mitochondrial medicine and more kind of cutting edge biohacking and things like that.
Wow. So it is incredible sitting with you now, because you look so healthy and vibrant, and just hearing the fact that you were diagnosed with leukemia at 15. Oh my goodness. It's heartbreaking. I have 5 kids, and my oldest is almost a teenager. She's kind of in the tween stage right now. But my biggest nightmare, my biggest fear is to have a child diagnosed with cancer or sick in a certain way. Can you take me all the way back and share maybe one of the hardest moments throughout that journey with cancer, even, the second journey as you had to deal with even the cardiac issues as well?
Thank you for asking. I really appreciate you honoring and seeing that journey, because I'm pretty much a warrior survivor, and we just keep going,
Yeah.
So I think at the time I had an innate intuitive knowledge that everything was going to be okay, and that there was a reason that it happened to me, and that I could handle it, which is kind of bizarre for a 15-year-old. my parents are amazing. I have 2 siblings. So at the time, my one sister was 12, and then we had a baby sister was 3. So my 12-year-old sister probably got the brunt of feeling somewhat abandoned at the time because my parents were, in a panic over me. The 3-year-old is going to get attention. But we all just rallied together. And I think that time during high school, I made the best out of it. I had a pass to get out for like different lab tests and things. So I would use excuses and go, take my friends out to lunch or something. I would try, and then I would eat. You'll love this. I would always, back then, you would throw up after chemo because now they have the drugs where you don't really throw up, but they didn't have them back then. And so I would go eat like candy bars and like all kinds of crap that I normally wouldn't eat because I was like, oh, it's coming up anyway. So that was kind of how I would I would always just try to think of something fun. Mm-hmm. So that was the high school experience. And I had great friends. Still graduated on time at the top of my class. I was really lucky. I didn't have to be hospitalized. And then when it relapsed, which technically it was called a sanctuary site, it was just on my ovary. So they had to take my ovary out. They thought it was a cyst. But when I woke up post-anesthesia, they said that it was actually the cancer. And instead of my junior year at Emory that I was supposed to start and go back to Atlanta, I ended up in New York because it was a very rare presentation. And I was lucky enough that my uncle had a studio on the Upper East Side, and it was walkable to Sloan Kettering where they were going to be treating me. So I made the best out of it. I love New York. I was living in the city, went with my parents, took turns staying with me, had great nurses and great doctor care up there. And I was so I knew I wanted to do medicine at that point. So there was one of the scariest times was probably one of the first weekends that my parents actually decided to be together. Because at the time I had a boyfriend that lived in New York and was able to stay with me, and they took the chance to have the whole rest of the family at home in Tampa. And I woke up in the middle of the night with just him there. That's when the heart failure set in. So I went into heart failure without my parents there. And luckily enough, my uncle and they were able to fly right in, and they took care of it. And that was my first exposure also to supplements, because back then my uncle, who was a podiatrist, started sending me carnitine and CoQ10, which these people weren't talking about vitamins that much, during that time. It was the early 90s. And it was on auto ship, and it just kept coming, and I just kept taking it. So I was able to only be hospitalized once. I took a class at Hunter College, physics at night, during that first semester of my junior year.
Wow. And
I graduated undergrad on time, which is insane. And I really wanted to stay at Emory for medical school. And I got waitlisted. And I just, I shared my story. And then when I busted my butt my senior year, got an A in this particular class, and I had gotten to know the dean's office because I would pop in there. And I popped in with my A, and I got in the next day off the waiting list. So perseverance, and just kind of constantly trying to make the best of it, and having supportive family were what got me through. But it was hard, and to this day there are times when I'm clearing the trauma out in different ways, like fascial work and finding some deep-seated things that were released, and sitting with the grief of not having a totally normal high school and college experience.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You turned that pain into purpose, though. And it gave me chills when you said you had an intuition that you were going to overcome the cancer even as young as 15, and that you'd be able to do good and impact others. I mean, that just gives me chills. It's amazing that you were so confident even as a young person. And have you been cancer-free since then?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. So the thing that has acted up somewhat throughout my life has been my heart. And even with that, I've been thankful because it's always led me to the next evolution of something to bring to my practice. So whenever I would have issues, which nobody thought I could get pregnant, I had one ovary, 5 years of chemo, and I got pregnant with my daughter the first time. So that was kind of a miracle. Did well during the pregnancy. My heart had a little trouble right at the end, but after she was born, that's when I got all kinds of other things that chemo can really leave its trail. And so I ended up with autoimmune, thyroid, and psoriasis, and eye problems where I couldn't open my eyes. And I went through all my nutritional and functional medicine stuff. And then I ended up even seeing all the traditional doctors, and nobody could really help me. And at that time was when I got exposed to Dr. Springer and muscle testing. And when he did his muscle testing, he looked at me and said, "How are you functioning?" And whereas all the other scans and labs and things had told me I was fine.
Ugh.
So that was another, like, my body leading me to the next evolution of what I was supposed to be doing in my practice. And I started sending patients to him, but very quickly we realized we were meant to be together in practice. So he ended up eventually coming full-time with me into my practice in Tampa.
Incredible. And when he looked at you and said, "How are you functioning?" What was he referring to? Was your liver suboptimal?
Leaky gut. So I had leaky gut. I had 3 chronic fatigue viruses. I had mold and yeast, bad bacteria. My adrenals were crashed. So when we did all of that, I had been told the only way to heal my eyes was with surgery because it was a sort of autoimmune thyroid ocular issue, and I never have had surgery on my eyes.
Wow.
So that was pretty impressive. And between him and my body and the patients leading, because they're always asking, I just have had the gift of the critical mind and not being indoctrinated. I was never indoctrinated into a system. It allowed me to stay out of like a conglomerate of healthcare. I was always able to be on my own. And then I was even able to have a second kid, which is pretty wild.
Aww.
So I got pregnant. I actually went for my 40th birthday. I went to Miraval.
Yes.
Have you ever been to Miraval?
No, I haven't.
So it's a resort in Arizona. They've got a couple now, but they had a psychic there, and I had never seen a psychic. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to do this. And she asked me if I had 2 kids. And I had to say, you know, I always wanted it. And we had been trying for a second, and it just wasn't happening. And then I had a miscarriage, and I was already 40. So I just kind of was like, I have 1 ovary. Come on, 5 years it came out. And I'm very comfortable. I have a healthy daughter. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
And she took her hand and drew around me and said, "Oh, well, a boy's soul has already picked you out." And I got pregnant on my own 6 months later.
Oh my goodness.
And so my boy is 12, and he was born under emergency general cardiac anesthesia because my heart gave out at the end.
Oh my goodness.
But you know, just one more thing to navigate, and then my patients have benefited from all these different journeys because I've been able to bring the most cutting edge medicine that's not indoctrinated into my practice.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so first of all, we could talk for hours.
And we will.
And we will. And we will. This is conversation 1 in a series of conversations. I got chills again. You're just giving me all the chills today. That's so wonderful. You have a son. Yeah. I have 2 sons, and I have 3 daughters, but man, there's something about the mother-son connection. Ugh. It's hard to explain unless you experience it.
It's beautiful.
And both of my sons are mama's boys. But that's just so wonderful. Your journey has been such a gift. And I'm only saying that because it's clear that's how you perceive it. Yes. And the joy on your face, even talking about these very painful points throughout your life, is really such a wonderful indication of how you are here to serve and you know, wanting to serve other people. So I have to ask more about on the delivery bed with heart failure, because I've been, you know, through now 5 deliveries. I delivered
God bless you.
A couple of them at my house in my backyard. But
amazing.
It's a different. But then I do want to shift after we talk about that part of the story. I want to talk about a particular topic on the table. We're going to talk about some weight loss shots and peptides and so forth. But just tell us, because we have so many moms listening. What was that like? How did you overcome through that? How did you get through even just the next couple days postpartum and all of that?
Well, they were watching me pretty closely at the end, and I was getting echoes every week, and I had an echocardiogram, and the cardiologist was in the same building, and I went back up the stairs, and I was seeing a patient, and I was supposed to be induced 2 weeks later, and they wanted to have it in a controlled environment and a C-section and all of that, and they just didn't want me pushing with my history. And he came and knocked on the door, the cardiologist, and he was like, I had a patient in the room, and he pulled me out and said, "You're done."
Oh my word.
And I was like, "Sorry?" He's like, "No, your heart's given out. You're going to the hospital right now."
Oh,
so I said, "No, I have to finish with this patient," because that's kind of. So I finished with the patient. I was halfway through the conversation, called my mother, and this is a testament to my mom and everybody who's listening's mom, who has that mom bond, or who's a great mom themselves.
Yeah.
But I called my mom, who was in Nashville, and crying, I don't even have pajamas, and scared. And I went to the hospital at around 2. She walked in the door at 7 from Nashville.
Wow.
Holding a Dillard's bag with pajamas.
Oh.
Yeah. Which still makes me tear up today. But I went through the surgery. The goal was to get that baby out as fast as possible. He was only in the NICU for a day or 2. Wow. It was pretty miraculous. And Dr. Springer came into the hospital, and we used muscle testing actually on the baby, because I was really nervous that the baby felt abandoned or confused, because it was just kind of ripped out all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. And we were able to reset doing some kind of tapping and things, his nervous system.
Oh my goodness.
While I was holding him and we were doing muscle testing. So that was really wild.
Yes.
But it wasn't till, just one last brief thing about my journey, about 8 years ago, when I had the 2 kids, a full practice, a busy tax attorney husband, and I crashed with my heart again without a pregnancy. And it was early menopause came in, and I was with my daughter, was having a birthday party at the beach, and I had like 5 12 or 13-year-olds, and I couldn't walk. So I went into the hospital, and long story short, on that part of the journey, it was when I really realized, I kept asking, why? What else do you want from me? Like, all I do is serve. Isn't it enough? And the message was, you don't serve yourself. And so many moms, like, if you're listening, like, I just was I had been working on it. I had been aware of my people-pleasing accommodator tendencies, but that was the wake-up where it was enough. And since then, it's been a lot of also soul work and looking for spiritual causes of illness with my patients, in addition to me, and clearing out that trauma.
Do you have a pacemaker or anything?
I do.
Oh, okay.
At that point, they had to put it in, so you can actually see it here.
Oh, yeah.
The pacemaker was one where it was more for the heart squeeze, so it was able to get me safely out of the hospital. But then I was able to do all my fun stuff, which is stem cells, exosomes, more mitochondrial work, peptides, and I can do anything now. So next time I'll come work out with you, because I can pretty much do everything.
Oh, I love it. Okay, you are for sure going to be in a workout with us.
Yes.
That's so fun. We actually just did a workout in Tampa. We do live leg days all over the country.
Oh, fun.
Next year it's going to be all over the world, because we're going to a Spanish-speaking location. But we had over 500 people in Tampa come to get their booties kicked on a Saturday morning.
Oh,
I couldn't believe it.
500.
It was our biggest one
Wow.
yet. Yeah, it was so fun. So we'll have to have you at the next one. That'd
Love
be
it.
so great. I love that you just brought up exosomes and stem cells, because I do exosome injections regularly. Awesome. And I also saw that you have a relationship with Tony Robbins, and I know he does exosomes as well. So we have to do a whole deep dive on that and peptides and all of this. I do want to shift into a conversation on the weight loss shots, and then maybe we'll have some time at the end to talk about what you do just to stay so vibrant and energized. There are certain companies that are becoming extremely popular in the marketplace today and growing quite rapidly. One of the fastest growing companies, whether it's tech industry, weight loss industry, any industry, you name it, retail, is Ozempic, which is a weight loss shot. And I admittedly haven't done extensive research on this particular company, more than just the financials, because from a business standpoint, I'm like, wow, what are they doing? How are they doing it? But it's absolutely worth noting that this is one of the most rapidly growing companies in the world right now. And I own a fat loss company, so I do have a lot of clients and coaches asking me about these things. They say, if I'm in a plateau, should I try something like Ozempic? Should I do this? Should I do that? We do have a lot of clients coming to us who are already doing different weight loss shots, semaglutide, Tepati, I believe, Manjaro. So I just wanted to hear from you because you are absolutely an expert on all things weight loss and you have experience with these weight loss shots as well. So I want to talk about kind of what they are. We're going to discuss the pros. We're going to discuss the cons because there absolutely is research and some cons. And then we'll kind of leave it to our listeners to make some decisions about whether or not they feel it's something worth trying or not at this time. So give us some context. Share with us, what are these weight loss shots? What is semaglutide? What is Ozempic? What are these things?
So semaglutide is the generic name for Ozempic. So they're the same. Tirzepatide, the generic name for Mounjaro.
Yeah.
So they're not like four different things. So there's also a lot of new names coming out.
Right.
That because the drug companies are kind of tripping on themselves trying to create new versions of the same thing. But essentially, they've been around for a while, and they're what's called GLP-1 agonists. So there is a glucagon-like peptide that, if it's more active, does a lot of very positive things. And it turns out that potentially when we age, when we have hormonal imbalances, toxins, stress, that the GLP levels can go down. And so by helping them, we can correct a lot of insulin resistance. And the drugs were actually created for diabetes, and they work quite well for diabetes. And what they found was when they were doing diabetic studies, patients were losing weight, and they were losing more than they would typically see just with better glucose control. And so historically, when I've worked with weight loss patients, if they're diabetic or insulin resistant, they don't lose a lot until their sugars are under control. So I always tell them, like, phase 1, we've got to get your sugar under control. Phase 2, you'll start losing. This is kind of hitting, and the weight loss was happening sooner. So they started talking about, well, could this be used for weight loss? And then it just kind of like started rolling very quickly. Some of the earlier research that got me interested is that this is doing things on a much broader level than people are talking about. So there are some scientific studies showing that these drugs are able to have direct anti-inflammatory benefits, cardio and neuroprotective benefits. So instead of and obviously the insulin and glucose response. So they have a broader treatment benefit than what they were originally developed for, which is why I think the weight loss has been so significant, because as a whole, these class of drugs do really work for many people that maybe have been stuck before in the past.
Yeah. So really quick, we'll define weight loss versus just simply fat loss. So in the faster way, we focus on fat loss. We recently completed a clinical trial, and it was really exciting because our faster way clients versus the other people who are following kind of the food guide pyramid by plate type, our clients, they burned fat, they lost visceral fat while gaining muscle.
Beautiful.
In 6 weeks, where the My Plate Food Guide Pyramid group, they actually gained weight and did not lose or gain muscle. In fact, I should know this like the back of my hand. We recently launched the podcast. They might have even lost muscle. Like, I mean, it was exactly the opposite of what you're hoping for. In the faster way, we want to burn fat, gain muscle. That often translates to weight loss. But it doesn't always. It doesn't always translate to weight loss. We want to get rid of that dangerous visceral fat, though. That's really the main key. And many times we say you're not dealing with a weight problem. You're dealing with a muscle problem. You don't have enough muscle. It's actually kind of like opposite day. Like
So true.
Yes,
and retraining. And there's a lot of information coming out now, a new book and different things coming out now on the importance of muscle. And I think I learned a lot about that early on with my gastric bypass patients. Because they were losing all of their muscle. And then they were getting all kinds of metabolic syndrome problems. They were tending to gain weight back, but their immune systems were screwed up. So I've always been really focused on looking at muscle mass in addition, and not just the number on the scale. So I love that's the whole premise here for how you run your business.
Right.
So that's what started happening, is that people were having sort of that everybody's looking for the quick fix, and they were getting it with semaglutide, and they started ordering it online, or doctors that didn't have experience in it just kind of recommending it in high doses without paying attention to it. So it kind of is almost like the cart ran away, whatever the expression is.
Yeah.
ran away without the whole,
We just created that new expression.
It's just like, it just kept rolling without anybody saying, hold on a second, what is happening here? And then the newer drugs that are out, so tirzepatide or Mounjaro, and now there's a triple agonist that's about to come out. Tirzepatide or Mounjaro is actually 2 drugs, so it's got 2 different peptides in it. And now there's a triple that is about to be launched. So what I found is that the dual actually has less side effects and works better for fat loss. It can lead to muscle loss, and that is a big concern about these drugs, because I was having, same like you, I know patients coming in that were maybe getting it online or getting it from other practitioners, and that's where that name, the Ozempic face, and there's clear loss of muscle mass, and they don't look good.
Right.
You know, it's really not an attractive look.
Yeah, yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is that Mounjaro, Ozempic, they are effective when it comes to that insulin response, when it comes to the blood sugar issues. But what you're also saying is doctors are overprescribing or perhaps not educating a patient adequately regarding how to live a healthy lifestyle alongside taking the drug so that they don't lose the muscle. And you know, for me, I just have to share this personal story, and you guys are just going to think this is nuts. And I know, Dr. Lisa, you are as well. So I recently had a lot of testing done, and I was just, you know, wanting to check, do I have a susceptibility for cancer, or do I have any blood sugar issues? Do I have this? Do I have that? And then I wanted to also test gut health and so forth. What can I do from the standpoint of more personalized or customized supplements? And so I was prescribed a slew of new supplements to help with deficiencies. And when I opened up my package in the mail, one of the things in the box was actually tirzepatide. It was actually a weight loss. And I'm like, what is this? And it said, you know, possible side effects, nausea. And I'm like, why is this in here? Like, one of the main issues that I see in the marketplace right now is that these drugs are being overprescribed, even by doctors who are meaning well. They just don't have they're like not slowing down enough to say, does this patient need to lose? Like, that's never even been a goal of mine.
Did you ask them why? Was it based on
did.
labs, or?
They really did not want to admit, but I think I finally got them to saying, like, it's basically we copy paste recommendations for our patients, and like, you just got the copy paste. Like, I think I pretty much finally got them to assume that. So I'm like, okay, so I'm not going to take anything else on this list until you explain to me exactly what in my blood work necessitated this supplement. And I literally, like, I halted everything, and I said, okay, I'm not doing nothing. I said, I'm not doing the vitamin C. I'm not doing the, like,
come over
I know I need,
I think
exactly.
Let me take a look at all of that.
I'm going to drive over. I know. So I was actually not happy at all. But again, you know, what I want to share for the listeners, you are absolutely saying these peptides, these weight loss peptides, can be effective for certain people at certain times for particular reasons, specifically insulin resistance.
Absolutely.
Which is something that I've struggled with. I've had PCOS, insulin resistance, blood sugar issues. I was prescribed metformin, you know, so I have a father with type 2 diabetes. So you are saying there is an appropriate time and place, but I want you to kind of dive into that a little bit more, like in your own experience or with a patient, when, what, when, where, why, how, with some of these weight loss peptides.
So as a general rule, I try to put a CGM, so the continuous glucose monitor, on a lot of my patients.
Love that.
And if they are hanging in the 90s to 100s fasting, they're more likely to have an even better response to these peptides.
Can you say that again?
Yes. If the patient's CGM, so if they're monitoring, and if any of your listeners have not done that, I strongly recommend you do it, because you can get surprised.
Yeah.
You know, and there are ways now you don't have to even get it through a doctor. There are companies where you can get it online on your own.
Yeah.
But just awareness, body awareness, being more connected to self, watching what happens when you fast, when you do a certain workout, when you eat a certain food, what is your sugar doing?
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of very valuable information. And what I noticed with me was after I went into that early menopause, I gained about 10 pounds and my sugar wouldn't come down. So I was doing all the things I obviously eat. I live the lifestyle and I eat clean, and it was not happening even with hormone replacement therapy. My leptin was high, which is a marker of metabolic dysregulation, and my A1C was up a little bit. Around 5.6, 5.7, and I was just really having trouble getting it down.
Yeah.
So I decided to research. That's what brought me into the world a little bit deeper, because usually my body has led me, and then I bring it to the patients.
Yes.
So I started researching, and when I saw it actually had cardiovascular benefits. Because of my history with chemo and heart issues, I won't just try anything. And so for me, even to try it, my patients have been surprised that I would even try this. And it's been a game changer for me. But because I knew about the risks of loss of muscle, because I knew about all the potential side effects. We have a very different way that we approach it in our practice. So these drugs, like for example, tirzepatide has been approved up to 15 milligrams in the drug form. And what I found was a lot of people that were going to other places were up at 10, 12, and 12.5. We don't really, it's rare we go over 7.5. Most of my patients can stay around 5, especially if they're doing things like your program. While they're doing it, they don't need the same amount of drug.
Yeah.
But could a very small dose of it be enough to help reset some of what we don't understand yet? That is what's happening at that glucose insulin receptor that's causing it, to have these resistant metabolic problems.
Yeah.
So we go very slow, and then that tends to mitigate a lot of the nausea, vomiting, constipation. We do see side effects. I think it's less with tirzepatide than semaglutide. And if we go slow enough, the patient a lot of times, again, can stop at 5 milligrams, which ends up being more cost effective, less risk, and then we just get them to where we want them, but we're only doing it while we're monitoring things like grip strength, and we have a body comp machine, so we're looking at their muscle. So
Bingo, bingo, bingo. Yes, I think that is phenomenal and absolutely the key. You're probably putting them in a bod pod.
Well, yes.
Something similar. And you are monitoring whether or not they're losing muscle because, often I say we have to reverse engineer from the end of our life. So if you are interested in living to 100, which I think we all should. Let's assume we can live to 100. Let's reverse engineer. What do we want to be like when we're 100? What do we want to, do we want to be walking around, vibrant, strong, healthy, or do you want to be using a walker? Do you want to be just only able to sit and barely stand? If you want to be healthy, strong, vibrant, have energy, endurance, you need muscle. You need muscle.
Absolutely.
I am very wary of anything, whether it's a diet program, a weight loss peptide, that would negatively impact the muscle of my clients. But the fact that you are monitoring the muscle is key, and being sure that you're consuming enough protein along the way, I think is absolutely such an important
because most
component.
of us are, protein malnourished to begin with. So I give them all the lecture, like that we will not continue the drug unless they get in enough. And then we go, most of my patients need between 100 and 150 grams of protein, and we're trying to give them all the healthier ways to do that.
Yeah.
And we will a lot of times play with supplements like creatine and different types of protein powders. I don't think this is doable without a protein in the morning. So a lot of our fasting patients, I've told them that they can't really fast.
Got it.
So that's gonna be a big piece because they're not hungry enough.
Yeah.
So if they're fasting and they're doing this, there's no way they're going to hit the 120, 150. So I've decided in our practice, and we are doing some studies to just kind of track this with people, because I was my morning, I was not eating till 11 or 12, and I've had to go back to having my 40 to 50 grams of protein shake with creatine in it in the morning. And then I was able to put on 5 pounds of muscle without changing my weight.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Okay, I love you so much. We have to partner
Yes.
together in the future somehow. But, a couple things. You were checking your numbers even before considering trying in your own life trizepatide. So you saw what your blood glucose levels were looking like. You were, tracking it, because weight loss is all about the insulin response. Okay. So that is such a key component. And then I love that you said 120 grams of protein up to 150 grams of protein. Most people coming in to faster way are grossly under consuming on protein.
Yeah, like 60, right?
Oh my
if
God,
that.
60, 50, 70. I'm like, no, we're going to literally double that for you. And then tracking throughout, that is so important. From my perspective, kind of my preference for most clients is, if you are not doing a weight loss peptide right now, come in, learn the foundation of faster way, intermittent fasting, carb cycling. We do our low carb days. We pair that strategically with our workout cycle as well. We have whole food nutrition, gluten-free, dairy-free, so anti-inflammatory. We will focus on mindset. We do so many things that are very foundational to overall health and wellness. And then if we still are in plateau, it's important to get tested. Test, don't guess. Yes. So work with someone just work with Dr. Not like someone, just work with Dr. Lisa, because I'm on board with what you're doing and how you're doing it, versus I'm working with this person I'm like, I never said that was a goal of mine. It makes me not trust someone when so many doctors all over the country are handing this out like candy on Halloween, because let's be clear, doctors are business people too. They see the potential and they see that Ozempic is the fastest growing company in 2023. It's like, we have to be careful. We have to take ownership of our own health and wellness, and we need to go about things in the right way. Would you say that you're seeing more people in menopause who are really legitimately needing the peptides and seeing results versus someone in her, 20s?
Yeah, I would say it's more common in menopause. I would just like to respond to you about the doctor comment. I think doctors end up so frustrated. I really have compassion because we have tried for so long to help people, because they're all coming in complaining about their weight, and we've tried so hard unsuccessfully. So when this is something that works, even if they're not making money from it, it's just an exciting time. Like, oh my God, we finally hit something. I mean, I've been studying all these new drugs that have come out for 25 years. This is the first one that seems to work in a large majority of patients. So I would say menopause for sure is where we get this more stubborn, as you know, the stubborn fat, and this does seem to move the needle, and that's what's exciting. So if cutting the inflammation down enough, and it may be something where when they transition into maintenance, if they're starting with your program first, which is again why we need to be collaborating. But a lot of times if a patient's not eating well, I won't even give them the peptide again. I'll tell them, you need to go track. I need to see that you're getting 120 minimum grams of protein and clean the gluten and sugar out of your diet. And then we'll talk about the peptide. And I'm going to heal your gut first. We do it in kind of steps.
Bravo. Yeah, bravo. Let's talk about some of these cons. We discussed, I have a lot of high net worth neighbors, and you can tell the females and the males who are on Ozempic and have that Ozempic face. I mean, it is like, wow, I haven't seen you outside in the past 2 months, and now I can immediately, it's really actually alarming, and it's a little sad too, because it's not a good look.
No, it's not attractive.
Yeah.
And I think they look like they've aged, right? Which is what you just said a minute ago. You want longevity, you need muscle, and you can even see it right now if you're wasting muscle. You don't look healthy. So yes, that's the muscle. That's the losing too quickly. By definition, it's going to be too much muscle. So what I find in my practice, we don't see that. So we'll, patients, and if we do, we've had one or two patients who just wouldn't hit the protein and they come in and they don't look right and we won't refill it.
Yeah.
So that's when it's just like, until you prove to me that you put the muscle back on, this is off the table.
Oh, yeah, that's so good. So good.
Yeah, so that's a big piece of the side effect. But then when we see other cons, it is gastric mostly. So constipation, nausea. I've only had one or two people get pretty severe with the nausea vomiting type of scenario, and then we knew they just couldn't handle it. That was more common with semaglutide versus tirzepatide.
Yeah.
So we see a little bit less of that with the newer version of the peptide.
Yeah. And then economically, for those listening, I've had a few friends or colleagues who are doing semaglutide and paying several $100s per month. And we shared on a previous training, one gal said, okay, well, I did, semaglutide, I did Ozempic for 5 months and it was $700 a month and I lost 12 pounds. So it's like, okay, 700 times 5 is, what's that?
3,500, yeah.
Yeah. And so we kind of figured out how much it cost per pound. And then I was like, or you could have done my program for $199 if you lost the same. So I actually just had a friend who texted and was kind of asking me some questions about this. And this person happens to be doing the semaglutide. And I said, is it helping? Are the results faster? And, said, well, eating less because I'm not hungry. So I'm, eating less. I do feel weaker and can't, hit the gym as hard. And then, I'm kind of asking, but are the results faster? Because I'm not really seeing faster results. You know what I mean? I'm like, but I know when you committed in January to just healthier lifestyle, you were looking and feeling great too. So I think, as with anything, there are pros, there are cons. There are certain people who are absolutely going to thrive. Bioindividuality is still the key component of this. If you're listening and you're in menopause and you've hit a plateau and you're doing faster way and you're doing all the right things.
And your sugar's a little high.
And your sugar's still a little high. And, because you got tested and you saw that, this might be a really good, only work with Dr. Lisa. I want to just disclaimer, I don't know, who I haven't heard anyone speak about this with such education, but then also the right kind of formula for success versus you. I'm just so grateful for the perspective that you bring and the experience that you bring because you understand a healthy lifestyle. You understand fitness. You're a fit person. You understand the importance of muscle. And so I think that's absolutely the key for me when it comes to recommending someone. There's pros, there's cons.
And I think if they came in and did your program, they see how much it may be just that maybe you do this for 6 weeks and then you add in the tirzepatide at that point, and maybe you only need it for a few months, or maybe you're metabolically unwell to the level that a maintenance dose of 2.5 once a month while you're continuing to do all of the protocols that you have, that's perfect. So it just depends on the individual, like you said, and what's working for them.
Right. Okay, I want to talk about exosomes. Tell our audience, what are exosomes? Because not everybody knows.
So in the stem cell world, which has blown up over the past, let's say, 15 years, there have been different ways to access these types of cells and responses. The goal has historically been everything from longevity to just healing repaired tissue. That's kind of how it started a lot, was for tears and joints. Stem cells were found to be able to be injected and avoid surgery, so which has been very exciting. So it's an entire field of medicine called regenerative medicine, and exosomes are kind of the newer kid on the block. So exosomes, they're both coming from the same place. So when moms go in to deliver in a C-section, ages 18 to 23, so it's a small number of people, they are asked if they want to donate their placenta. So that was typical after birth type material that was going to be going in the trash. And now it's doing all these incredible things because they can extract the cells. And then what happens when they take umbilical cord, they notice that exosomes are the messengers that wake up cells. They go in to turn on, and that's how the baby knows to grow and turn into, a human. So when we take exosomes ourselves as an adult, they actually can wake up our own cells and regenerate and lead to healing and all kinds of other great benefits. And what's really exciting about exosomes is they can do things like anti-inflammatory. They can help with skin on your face. They can help with joints. And now it's not in the US yet, but there's even a cell-specific exosomes, meaning somebody's found a way to it's a culture medium to make the exosomes go where you want them to go. Because right now, when you go get an IV, like you have done, like I have done, it goes to wherever there's inflammation. So these cells kind of are on their own, a little bit of a free-for-all. And it will go, like if you hurt yourself right before you had the exosome, it's going to go there instead of maybe if you want it in your heart or your skin or your joints. And now where this is going probably over the next 5 years is there's a culture medium where they can actually train them so that they only go to where you want them to go.
Wow.
So my interest has been in cardiac predominantly just because of my own journey. And when I crashed the more recent time, which was about 8 years ago, that's when I really got turned on to stem cells. And I did amniotic fluid, which has now been, that was before exosomes. Now that concept has been replaced by exosomes, the same general point, which is a messenger cell that can help turn on new cells for you and regenerate.
Yeah, this is a big deal.
Yeah,
this
it's exciting.
Is huge. It's very exciting. So I spoke with the owner of an exosome company who I, particularly work with to source my exosomes. And I believe Johnson & Johnson, or one of the big, companies, had tried to acquire my colleague's company for $20 billion with a B.
That.
But in the fine print, it said, and we can shut you down. Because a lot of these bigger companies, big pharma isn't necessarily in the business of curing problems.
That's another entire conversation that I am happy to have another time. I have very strong opinions on that.
Yeah. So they decided not to sell. But, the flip side of that is it's not very readily accessible to get these types of treatments. It's a very kind of alternative, almost like a biohacking, type.
Well, and talk about shark-infested waters, kind of like the peptides, right? Like everyone and their mother's trying the in-between distributors there. So you have to be careful.
So careful. Yeah, because what you don't want is bad exosomes injected into your body.
No.
So what else do you do, and we'll wrap up here, what else do you personally do to stay energized and vibrant? What are kind of some of the most important supplements or routines that you incorporate?
So a lot of mitochondrial. So I do very much grounding and sun gazing and a lot of light therapies. So on the red light bed, playing with methylene blue, which is another compound that gets activated by light and really helps oxygenation and your cells have more energy. So we talk about mitochondria, we're talking about the part of the cell that produces energy. So that piece is something only over about the past 10 years are people talking about it. So everything from cold therapy to light therapy helps activate mitochondria. So
what red light bed do you recommend?
We have the light stems in the office. So that's a full body bed. So for people at home, getting a unit is a good idea. You can get something decent, $400 to $500. It used to be more with the only kid on the block initially was Juve, and now I believe there are some companies like Red Light Co. It's called. There's a few different ones I can get you.
Good Christmas gift idea.
It is. It's a good holiday gift for sure. I think sitting in front of red light, for 20 minutes while you listen to a podcast, getting grounded in the earth, making sure I do a lot with trees, just literally like hanging out in nature, daily meditation and journaling, getting my sleep, tracking my sleep with the Oura Ring, those types of things. And then I obviously eat really clean. I start my day with brewed cacao, which I love because it's a heart opener. And then I put my 40 grams of protein and creatine right inside of it. So I like to kind of merge the worlds of energy, spiritual. That's been a huge piece of my own healing. I work with crystals a lot. A lot of the time, if I'm wearing jewelry, it's not just pretty, it's got a purpose. And just gratitude.
Yeah.
I live in a lot of gratitude.
Oh, yes. Okay. So I just bought a house in Costa Rica, and I feel like we could have
love
so much
Costa
fun.
Rica. Let's
the
go.
best country in the world. Yeah,
I led a retreat there recently.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. So I
love doing that
I
too.
purchased a home, and it's actually 4 different buildings because I'm going to be bringing our coaches and our team members, friends and family there quite often. So I just wanted a space where I could build out a sauna and do, really amazing things. We're on Peninsula Papagayo near the Four Seasons too, so you can't beat the Four Seasons.
I've been to that Four Seasons. It's beautiful.
The spa's great. But I love that. And you just exude, wellness from the inside out. And so I really appreciate that. Just, final maybe tip that you have for our listeners about any part of the conversation, or maybe an additional tip for overall health and wellness.
I would say you guys are in the right place listening to this incredible woman. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I think it trust your journey would be one of my biggest pieces of advice. Like, we all have interesting journeys, and it's what makes us into the next level of who we're here to become. So trust that higher version of you, and just because there's negative things, like a lot of the negative things with the peptides, doesn't mean it's all bad. So I think always having an open mind, always knowing that what may be right for somebody else may or may not be right for you, and being willing to take that journey to experience and decide for yourself.
Yeah. Dr. Lisa, where do we connect with you online? And are you willing to work with 60,000 people? So how many openings do you do virtual?
We do. We do some virtual. Florida is the easiest. In my clinic here in Tampa, Spectra Wellness, Dr. Lisa Koche on all the social outlets.
Perfect.
And I love just sharing. I do a lot. I'm very active on social media too.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. We are better off for it.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.